Oh boy, where to start? Hey, my name is Ivy and welcome back to my channel. It's been a minute since I said that. I haven't filmed, I think it's been well over a month now, and for a whole host of reasons, but I'm not going to really get into it because gosh knows that's boring information that you don't need. All I can say is I'm sorry that I was absent for a while, and I appreciate that even in spite of that absence, the channel has kept on growing and we've had so many new subscribers thanks to the shout outs and wonderfulness of all my friends, both on here and on Instagram. Thank you for keeping the channel growing. I'm getting closer and closer to my sort of unspoken goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I think it's possible. We will see. But even if it doesn't happen, I'm just so happy to have so many new faces around here. So thank you for joining if you're here. And if you do end up enjoying this video, consider subscribing if you haven't already. Today's video is actually in response to a series of stories that I posted at this point, I guess now like well over a month ago, around the, how shall I say this? The design desert that exists within the beauty community. And I don't even just mean the indie beauty community, but even just the wider beauty community. I have seen so much questionable, bad, really bad design within the beauty community, to the point where I even question whether or not it's something sometimes I still want to support. That doesn't mean there aren't some winners. There's some great things out there. There's some beautiful things out there, but there is unfortunately a lot of bad design. As someone who's made it their professional career to design and do marketing for a whole host of different types of brands, you know, designing is really in my blood. It's really important, not just to me, but to the world at large. You know, I think that it's often one of those underestimated things or something that is left until the last minute or unconsidered instead of giving it the kind of weight that it really deserves. Because when you think about it, the entire world of the beauty community really rests on the fact that you're asking people to buy your products and put them in their lives, on their vanities, in their bathroom, in their handbags, on their desks, wherever it is. These objects live in your space. They live in our spaces. They surround us every day. Why on earth would I want to buy something that makes my space uglier, that doesn't bring me joy, that feels like it's doing the bare minimum to exist? I certainly don't want that. I want better, I want more, I want beautiful, amazing design work, and there is so much prime real estate for it within the beauty community. So it actually kind of shocks me, to be totally honest, that it's as bad as it's been. But I think that there's a solution, and that solution is really just that brands maybe need to be more aware of what they're doing or be called out when they're not doing what is really appropriate. They need to start finding and working with designers that can really help tell their brand story, because I know as a designer there are tons and tons of people out there that are willing to work at really reasonable rates to help a brand visualize itself, to create, you know, beautiful work. You know, it doesn't have to be so unattainable, so uber expensive that it's impossible. I just want to start saying and being the voice of, hey, we can do better, and we as consumers need to expect more. So in short form, started to talk a little bit about this topic on stories and sharing some examples of brands that I thought were not doing the best work, and then also sharing some brands that I thought were doing a really great job or putting a decent amount of work into what they're putting out into the world. So I ended up connecting with one of my followers on Instagram, Lou, Lady of the Lipstick. Lou is great. We connect frequently on DMs in Instagram. They suggested, because I was getting super overwhelmed by how much content I thought was going to end up being in this video, that it would be a fun idea to kind of parse it out into multiple videos, kind of randomly generated. So I put all the brands that I was sort of looking at holistically on a spreadsheet, picked a random number generator to help me select what brands I'm going to talk about in this video, so that I didn't choose them. They were just selected by, you know, the ether, and talk about whether they are a roast or a toast. So we're going to do roasts and toasts for, I think it's 6 randomly generated brands today. I'm really excited. I can't wait to sort of see what comes up on the list that I get to talk about. And then we'll do more of these videos where I get to talk about roasts and toasts and tell you my thoughts about the brands and what they're doing. Now, full disclaimer, I am just one opinion, one voice. You may not agree with my opinion. You are totally entitled to that. This is also not about tearing brands down or hatred or bullying or anything like that. It's really just trying to isolate where some of the design problems are that I'm seeing. Even when it comes to accessibility, legibility, I really just want to call attention to areas that I think could be improved and put information out there that hopefully everyone will find enjoyable and helpful. Yes, there might be a little bit of snark, but it's not intended to be hateful. So hopefully you enjoy this, take it for what it's worth, and maybe we will start to see improvements in our little design beauty world in the future. I certainly hope so. So with that, I hope you will stick around for the rest of the video. Let's find out what brands have been randomly selected for me to talk about. Okay, so the first brand we're going to talk about is Micka Beauty Shop. Now, actually, I don't know if it's Micka Beauty Shop or Micka Beauty Shop. It is a brand that I am familiar with. I haven't purchased anything from the brand myself, but I do have a few friends who I know support the brand, have purchased from them, have had nothing but really lovely things to say about the products themselves. Mostly the eyeshadow palettes, I think, is what the friends I have tried. But let's talk about the packaging, because I have seen this particular brand, which I know is a very small, I think 1-person run brand. I have seen them kind of run the gamut. One of their more recent releases, I think it's called the Serpent palette that they did in collaboration with Marta's Makeup. They worked with an artist, and I will look up the name and put it with the artwork. They worked with an artist to do the cover art for this particular palette. Now, this palette's cover art I thought was absolutely beautiful. I love that they worked with an artist to bring it to life, and I thought that the attention to detail and the kind of uniqueness of this design was really something special. And it showed that the brand, along with the creator that they worked with to collaborate and bring this to life, and the artist who did the art, all kind of had a vision that they were able to help bring to life. I think that that's great. It's a really good example of everybody kind of coming together, clearly having the same vibes and bringing it to life. I will say that the font usage on the inside of the palette felt like a mismatch with the design of the artwork. I did like that the fonts were very legible, easy to, read. They weren't too tiny. They weren't some crazy light scripty font, but it did feel, again, like a kind of a mismatch with the actual palette artwork itself, because that was very elegant and beautiful, and then the font just felt kind of like flat. But overall, I think it was a really nice package, and the brand did a great job. However, if you go back into this brand's history, and again, I know it's a small brand, there's some pretty ugly stuff. There's some really ugly stuff. I think it's called the Glacier palette, where it's just like a blue cover with, snowflakes along the bottom and the brand's name, and it's extremely, clip art, stock art kind of vibes. Like, there's nothing special about it. There's nothing memorable about it. Is it the worst thing I've ever seen? No, we're probably going to talk about worse within the context of these videos, but it's not great. And then you kind of go even further back, and I've seen some worse things. Now, I have heard nothing but really positive things about the products themselves, which is great, but often the packaging seems like it's a letdown. The packaging makes it look and feel like a really bare minimum, private label, barely branded kind of product. It's not giving premium, handmade, hand-pressed vibes. So I think that's really unfortunate. Now, I think that there's a lot of opportunity and growth ahead for this brand. I don't know what their plans are. I don't know what their bottom line budgets are. But if they were able to create that Serpent palette, that means that they had an eye for a proper, if you want to call it that way, kind of collaboration. They found a great artist, they worked with a great creator, and they made a really good product. So I'm hopeful that they have their eye on the prize, and that moving forward, maybe we'll see more and better design from this brand. But definitely don't go too far back in their history, because there's just some really not great stuff. And I also want to make another quick disclaimer, which is that I am not saying all stock art usage is bad. Obviously, a lot of these brands In some cases, that may be their only way to sort of like cobble together assets. But even if you work with the right designer to work with stock, you can get to a really good and beautiful place. A lot of what I'm seeing feels like someone who has really no true understanding of design or even basic hierarchy and design principles. Like someone who has no business putting together a packaging design is doing the packaging design. That's what it looks like. So let's just nip that in the bud and say like, no. Let's not do that, okay? Okay, our second brand that we have been selected to discuss is Cosmic Brushes. Cosmic Brushes is a really interesting one to me because their aesthetic, I think, is actually pretty good. There's a lot of very kind of, I don't want to say basic because I wouldn't say that their packaging is basic, but there's a lot of really good grounded elements that they're bringing together in the design of their palettes. So I think of the Muse palette. Actually, I have two of their palettes, so let me grab them so I can show them to you in person. So I have the Muse palette, which is right here, and the Serenity palette, which is right here. Now, right off the bat, I can tell you these are extremely attractive designs. I also love the fact that the brand has thought about how they use embossing, so they have their logo embossed here, same here, and the fact that their packaging design or their artwork isn't really fighting with the name of the palette. It's also a really beautiful design here that totally fits within the color story. So when you open it up and you see the color story inside, doesn't that feel like a matchup? It totally works. And the same is true for Serenity in the fact that you open it up, you see the palette, and it feels like a really good matchup. Now, I can tell you that both of these palettes absolutely 100%, I'm sure, used stock art. So this is a great example of taking stock art and doing it really well. Now, I mean, is there a chance that they hired someone to like paint this for them? Sure. I doubt it though. I'll bet money on the fact that they didn't. They kept it simple. They kept it clean, minimal. They're allowing their brand to sort of come through in a very elegant way. My one qualm with this one over the other palette is that this word Serenity is completely illegible. There's no one, I don't think a single person I would ask to read what this word is would be able to tell me what this says. I know what it says. I think the packaging is beautiful and memorable and well branded, but this is still a problem. Having the name of the palette be completely illegible is not okay. You can use a really light script font, especially if it has enough contrast behind its background, and have it be effective, but this is a no-no. Muse does a better job in the fact that they actually have a legible version of Muse. They also paired it with this weird overlay of a very illegible version of the font. But again, contrast is an issue here. I love the background. I love that they kept the name minimal, but we're talking about basic accessibility. Like, you should be able to read the word Muse a lot more clearly than you can right now. I actually think that the font usage inside is really nice. It's clean. Everything's very clearly labeled. It's a clean sans serif font, legible. It's not taking away from the palette. It doesn't feel like that sort of stark contrast that I had with the Micka Beauty Serpent palette and the font inside. This feels like a pretty good matchup. I'm gonna give Cosmic Brushes a pretty good rating. I think that they, even in their most recent like Gothic palette that they put out, I thought that packaging looked really beautiful. Their newest holiday winter palette, again, same kind of vibes, very similar, clean, clear color scheme, etc. I think if they just tighten up their font usage a little bit, make sure that they're not doing anything that's really super illegible for the consumer, I will be 100% on board. But right now I'm like 99% on board. I think they're doing a great job and I think they should keep it up. Okay, I'm really excited to talk about the next brand, which is Unearthly Cosmetics. Unearthly is a super interesting one because it's so clear that the owner, I believe her name is Hayden. I know her tag on Instagram is Hayden Haunts. I don't know much about her and I don't have too much information behind the scenes, but I can just tell you that from following the brand and from following her, it's clear that she has relationships with artists and that she has put a big focus on working with certain artists to bring her vision of the brand to life. There is a clear vision of Unearthly that is coming to the forefront. I often see repeating use of female form, pinup girls, really sort of iconic female imagery being brought to the forefront of these palettes. I love it. I am totally here for it. I think it's great that the brand has been finding its voice and finding its style and doing some really cool and unique things. In fact, I was so excited about them working with, I think it's Miss Up Spacey. I don't want to mispronounce the name. I'll put all the information on the screen. They are working with that artist to do the artwork for their newest holiday palette. I loved it so much that I was extremely drawn into wanting to order it and purchase it for the art alone. So it feels like she's really interested as an owner with making collectible items, thinking about what's going to be on your vanity, understanding the sort of importance of packaging and of artwork in all the things that they do. I love that. I'm here for that. I'm excited about that. And there have been past collections that even though I wasn't interested necessarily in the products themselves, I was really excited about the artwork or the artists that they were working with. And so I would have been more tempted to pick it up than I would have been initially. However, they are not exempt from some, I would say, some poor design decisions. I have had difficulty with legibility with them as well, with some of their fonts. I feel that, because they are working with a variety of artists, that while there's a brand personality that's emerging, it's not always super clear. The vibe sort of can change dramatically from collection to collection. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but, as you're building a brand, you do want to make sure that it's very clear over and over and over again what your brand is. And so I think Unearthly is still honing in on that. They're getting better and more succinct at figuring out what that picture looks like. But if you go back in their history and look at older collections, you can see, I think it's taken them a little bit of time to get where they are. I think there's some past collections that I haven't loved the design. And I do think, like I said, legibility, font usage, all of that is still somewhat problematic. And I really do want to see brands start thinking more and more about accessibility, even in, not just in their brands and contrast and all of that, but also in like the way that their packaging opens. If something is difficult for someone with, dexterity issues to open, I'm not saying that's the case with Unearthly, but like, I'd like to see brands start to pay more attention to this. I've seen some brands really do that, and I think it's welcomed by the community. And I think that the more that brands show that they care, the larger their audience grows. So I would like to see that and expect that. I would say on the whole, Unearthly is kind of like on the higher end of mid. I think that they're doing wonderful collaborations with artists and, that they are creating a vision and bringing it to life. I just want to see a little bit more consistency and more attention paid to legibility and, again, font usage, contrast, all of that. Okay, the next brand is Half Magic Beauty, which I don't think qualifies as an indie brand. It is the makeup brand that was founded by Donnie Davy, who is the makeup artist from Euphoria, really became famous for their makeup design on that show. I remember when Donnie announced that she was going to be launching a brand, I was really excited to see what this person would do. Because I was like, well, they have such a clear style, such beautiful graphic, unique makeup styling that I'm sure their brand is going to be really interesting. And I have to say, I am not super impressed with the design of this brand. There are elements that I think are really cool. I actually love the compostable sort of neon green yellow packaging that they have for some of their products. I think it's the single eyeshadows, but there is such a lack of consistency across the product lines within this brand. It feels super disparate, and it's edging into that kind of Clairsy category where it just looks cheap to me. It doesn't look expensive. I'm not saying every brand has to have an expensive aesthetic. You can do quirky, interesting packaging without making it feel as though every product doesn't fit together. I just feel like there were so many ideas that she had for design, and every time a new product comes out, it has a slightly different look and feel to it. So when you look at the products as a whole, feels like I'm looking at like 5 brands to me. There's just a lot there. I think they could have benefited from an editor and someone to really help them rein it in. And again, I don't think that every element is faulty. I think there's some really good ideas there, and there's clearly this like design element of the kind of star diamond thing that permeates throughout. But yeah, it feels like it looks cheap to me, and I don't like that there's so much inconsistency. I think that that's something that if they had edited and kept it more concise, I would be a lot more interested in the brand than I am now, because I've heard great things about a lot of the products, but I've never been tempted to buy anything because I have found it to not be something I'm excited to have on my desk, on my vanity. And that's where most of my makeup is. It's in front of me on my desk. I want things there that I'm excited to look at. So Half Magic Beauty, I'm not totally saying it's a complete roast, but it's definitely roasty-ish. Roast-ish. Yeah. Okay, another interesting pull of the number gods here. Our next brand is Glamlite. I am new to Glamlite. I just made my first purchase from this brand a couple months ago. I picked up 2 palettes from a much older collection. I think the collection is about over a year old at this point, from their Scooby-Doo collection. They released these 2, 10-pan or 9-pan palettes that I thought were really cool. I'd been interested in them. And I actually really liked the way that they incorporated the kind of Scooby-Doo design into this packaging. I thought that the color usage was really vibrant and eye-catching. I thought that the packaging design was really good. It looked like a nice package to me. I went back and sort of familiarized myself with more of what Glamlite has to offer, and I found out that it actually originated as all food-inspired palettes. So until they started more recently branching out into, movie IPs, so you've seen there's like the Chucky palette, there's the Ghostface palette, the Friday the 13th palette. There's a lot of like recent horror palettes that they came out with. It was all food themed. So they had like a pizza thing, they had a candy thing. They've done some palette collabs that were not food themed, but some like really big palettes with Michaela. And it's certainly not giving, like, if you go back and look at what they've done, it's not giving, I hesitate to say luxury, because I'm not saying that that's the audience that they're going after, luxury vibes, but it's not giving elegance. It's not giving food at another level. It's not giving me, like, it's not really fulfilling a fantasy. I can see that their packaging design has certainly gotten better over time. I think that clearly when they're working with these IPs, there's someone or multiple people most likely working with them to really take good, earnest care of these IPs and bring them to life and do it in a really beautiful way. So I think that their more recent palettes are actually not bad, and that their packaging design is thoughtful. I know that there was something, I think it was for Friday the 13th, where they did like a VHS inspired thing, and not bad. I mean, if for what it is, and again, I'm not saying every brand should be minimalist and clean. Like, I want to see personality come through. There's editing that's being done. There's color coordination that's being done. There's a really good sense of like making sure that the brand is very, very clear, but also that the IP is very clear. So they've gotten better. But yeah, some of that older stuff, I'm just like, rough. And that's what happens. As you grow as a brand, you get more money, you get more people working for you. It can be good or bad. You can grow and lose sight of what your tenants are, and then all of a sudden everything is ugly. Or you can grow and start to put more money into things like packaging design and working with artists and all of that. So I like more of what I'm seeing recently. Like, it's the kind of thing where if I'm really interested in something, I would be tempted to support and buy from them. But a lot of it has edged into super cheesy kind of territory, and I'd like to see them continue to kind of elevate what they're doing, and I hope that they don't go backwards. They just keep going forwards and doing really good things. Because I think packaging wise, the Scooby-Doo palettes that I purchased, are beautiful. They did a great job. Nailed it. Oh boy. Okay, our final brand, y'all, is a doozy. This one was sent to me by multiple people in my DMs. Now, I actually had more responses to the stories that I posted in general about design from people than I've ever had before, so my DMs were popping on this subject. But when I say I had more people submit and send me this brand than any other brand for bad design, I kid you not. It was like half of my subscriber list. Unfortunately, this is going to be a definite roast. The brand is Sugar Drizzle Polish. Even the name sets the stage, perhaps, for what we are about to discuss. I'm not familiar with this brand, meaning I'm aware of their existence, but I have not purchased anything from them. And I don't really know people that have spoken to me about the brand. They have become, I think, somewhat unfortunately synonymous, really a leader of bad design. There's a new palette they just came out with, or relatively new, called Element of Evil. I saw that one. Then before that, there was like a weird gothic mermaid one that's kind of edging into like Tim Burton look and feel. Oh yes, the Plumeria Dragon. Yes, that I remember seeing as well. The Mojito palette, that one I saw as well. Gosh, there's so much here to discuss. Oh gosh, yeah, there's like a butterfly one and a dragonfly one. Those take the cake. Those really, oh boy, where to start? This is very much exactly what I was talking about earlier in the sense that this feels like somebody doing the design that shouldn't be. knows nothing about design, knows relatively little about design. I don't know if it's the owner that's doing the artwork, maybe they were just trying to do everything. Just because you have an interest or a knowledge of how to make eyeshadow, or you're working with a private label company to like create eyeshadow palettes, doesn't mean that you should be doing the design work as well. I don't know if in some of these instances, it looks like in a couple of cases they probably collaborated with an artist. Just because you collaborate with an artist doesn't automatically make it good. It does not give you a free pass. There's plenty of bad artists out there too. Not every artist, because they're an artist, is a good artist. And I think that, again, there's just a lot of bad choices being made here, from layout designs that make no sense, to live, laugh, loving your type font usage, to just like random selections. Also, there is nothing that ties this brand together. There is nothing that says Sugar Drizzle Polish, again, and I guess they started maybe as a nail polish brand and then they expanded into makeup, I'm not sure, but there's no brand here. There's just a sea of ugly design elements floating around in the ether. It's bad, y'all. Like, you couldn't pay me to buy this. I know that sounds harsh. I know that sounds really harsh. You could tell me that this was the best makeup in the world, and guess who is not buying it? This guy. I think this brand needs a hardcore makeover from top to bottom. I'm not trying to say they're a bad brand or that they're trying to do the bare minimum, but this is not selling me anything. It's not selling me any kind of fantasy. It's not selling me any kind of personality or brand. You're not quirky just because every single thing that you do looks completely different from each other. There is nothing holding this together. There's no singular art style, and there's no real design sense. It just feels like a plate of randomly selected things that none of which were done particularly well. I could get into the super finite details on this one, but I'm not going to, because it's just not worth it. They need an overhaul. They need to find a designer, an art director that can understand what this owner's vision is, that can understand what they're going for and help them visualize it. Create a mood board, start from scratch, rebrand, just rebrand, tear it down and start over. Yeah, that was a good one to end on because I have very strong feelings about it. If you enjoyed this video, and I certainly hope that you did, please definitely give it a like before you leave it and subscribe so that you can hang out with me in more future content. I am going to be making more of these videos. toasts and roasts and toasts. There are more coming because I have a whole long list, and I know a lot of you are anxious to hear me talk about more of the brands, so expect that to be coming along with other things as well. I'm super excited. I am sorry again to have been absent for so long, but I really appreciate your patience, and I hope this was a fun one to kind of get me back into the vibe of filming and get you back into the vibe of watching me. So with all of that, I want to say thank you again for being here, for subscribing, for watching, for supporting. I am incredibly appreciative. Really, you have no idea. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.